All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to August 13th MakerDAO community call. My name is David. I work with the community development team here at Maker, and we do these calls every week in hopes to bring the community together and update them on all the stuff that's been going on in MakerDAO for the last week, basically. And so we cover a lot of stuff. We cover the governance side of things. We cover partnerships, integrations, and grants. We cover just posts from our blog, highlights from the community, real life events, pretty much the whole gamut of what's going on in the Maker universe. And every once in a while, we have a guest. This week, we do not have a guest, but we have a pretty interesting agenda because a lot of cool stuff has been going on this week. And specifically, I'm going to start it off with governance. And for the people in the call, I know we have like a pretty small call today, but feel free to interrupt me. Feel free to raise points and questions. As much as I love going on a monologue, hint, I don't. Feel free to converse because I'm here to facilitate and to share. But I love the back and forth that I get sometimes in these calls. So feel free to interrupt me. But for governance, we have a few things going on. I'm going to cover some of the votes that have been launched this week. So an executive vote was launched on August 9th on, I believe that's Friday, right? Yeah, on Friday. Yes, on Friday, the Maker community voted on basically having the next executive vote be a lowering of the stability fee to 19.5% a year. And with this current voting dashboard, we actually also see the 18.5% proposal. So if you're an MKR holder and you want to participate in the current executive votes, you could vote for either the 18.5% decrease or the 19.5% decrease. But these votes have been live for a little while, and it doesn't look like they're getting too much traction. I think there's around slightly under 30,000 MKR voting for a decrease to 18.5%, while there's around 75,000 MKR blocking the proposal from actually happening. And so if you're unfamiliar with how the executive votes in Maker work, basically any new proposal has to surpass the old proposal, and the old proposal symbolizes the current state of the system. So for a new proposal to pass, the majority of Maker voting in the system has to actually shift. And that's how changes have been happening pretty much since single collateral Dai really started to have a governance cycle. Like I guess 8 or 9 months ago is when we really started ramping up governance. So besides that, we have a bunch of governance polls. So if you guys haven't been following along, we recently had an upgrade to the governance polling system. So it no longer relies on DS Chief. We've created this thing called the polling emitter contract. And basically, if you have MKR in your hot or cold wallets and you have set up a voting contract through the governance portal, you're able to vote on as many governance polls as you want concurrently, and it won't limit you from like voting on anything else. So before we had the problem where your MKR was essentially stuck in one proposal, regardless if it was a governance poll or an executive vote. But now that the problem is solved, we're able to run a bunch of different polls at once. So our bandwidth has increased as of this week. So we have two different sets of governance polls happening. So we have one for the stability fee adjustment. Constantly, we still have governance polls for this because we want to always see the soft consensus around what should happen with the stability fee as judged by MKR holders. And so right now you could vote for anything between a range of 16.5%, lowering it to 16.5% to raising it to 24.5%. So if you are interested in doing that, you can go. Or if you agree with the current executive votes, you could just vote in the executive. And if it gains enough ground, it'll actually make a change in the system. The other governance poll that's going on is the asset priority list poll. So this went live on also August 12th just on August 12th, yesterday. And it's going to run for 7 days. So Maker holders have basically a week to vote in 7 individual yes or no polls. And each asset basically is going to be weighted according to these votes. And a asset priority list is going to be created for the risk team, and the interim risk team at Maker is going to be taking these assets one by one and doing like very extensive, very careful, high quality collateral onboarding and collateral assessment on these assets, so that they could be voted in and decided, and so all the governance parameters will be decided for them, for multi-collateral Dai, basically. And so this is what we're voting on now, just the asset priority list. So if you're a MKR token holder and you want to participate, definitely do that. And if you don't participate, it's okay, because the smaller minority will have more influence. So it's your loss. Haha. Just joking, but not really. So besides that, we had one really interesting thread come out of the community this week in governance. So IMEO, which is one of our community members. He's been in our community for some time, and I respect him a lot because he's always an advocate for better transparency, and he's not afraid to make honest criticisms. And so this week, he had a bunch of really interesting points to raise around mainly concerns centering governance and risk calls and the roadmap to multi-collateral Dai. And so just to like really briefly give you like a synopsis of the thread that he put up, uh, the I'll kind of list the 5 or 6 points that he had. So the content and length of the calls is like low because we tend to over explain things, which I don't disagree with, but this is not malicious. I think everybody in the call's goal is to do their best, obviously, to communicate what's been going on. And yes, we definitely do need to iterate on the call and make things better, and we're always trying to do that. The second one was, at the same time, participation seems low. Uh, Also with YouTube data, how many people actually like watch and follow along with these things. And of course, it is pretty low. It's not a lot of people, but the people that do watch are the ones ultimately making these decisions. So, you can't sacrifice quality just because there's not a lot of people there. But I don't think that's like the actual criticism. It's just low amount of people, and it does suck. Uh, but I think that as MakerDAO grows, the governance community will certainly grow. Uh, and we have a lot of really great people in our community, which I'm very thankful for, and I know everybody is. But yeah, so I'm gonna kind of breeze through these a little bit more quickly. So the third point, he thinks that we should have few people in governance. That's actually a good thing. It's faster and better and more scalable, which I agree. That's kind of why we have like the same rotating group of people do similar presentations. Like Vishesh does his Dai analytics every week, and Primos comes on and does his analytics every once in a while. So yeah, the fourth was regarding progress towards multi-collateral Dai and selection of collateral. Uh, the complaint is that basically he lists out a bunch of different questions, like why aren't we having more academics and people in economic and finance around. I agree, we're actively trying to get those people to engage with us and create papers around this. I think there was a few papers released in the last few months by I think there was a group from Cornell that released a paper on like the credit risk of MakerDAO. Alex Evans put out a thing. But yeah, I definitely agree, more academics and like high level work should be done around MakerDAO. But again, this is definitely a thread worth reading. It's kind of hard to recap because it is so rich with a lot of really great points. But the general kind of gist is that all these points are definitely addressable, and I think that it's yeah. Regardless of what I think, you guys should check out the thread and make up your own minds. But uh, I just, I think it's great that he put out this thread, and I really love when community members do that. Uh, it sharpens us as a community. So thank you. So yeah, besides that, that's pretty much it in the land of governance. We have our Thursday governance and risk call as usual scheduled. So if you guys are interested, join that. It happens at the same time as this call. Uh, I'm going to cover now some of the more official stuff on the foundation side. So we actually have a new hire. We hired a gentleman by the name of Matthew as an account manager on our business development team. So he's going to be working with Greg, and he's a really great addition to the team. We're excited to have him on. And so that's about it for new hires. For partnerships, integrations, and grants, we have actually a bunch of updates. So from the ComDev side, we actually successfully helped Sablier raise a grant from us. And so if you don't know about Sablier, it is it's basically like God, how do I explain Sablier? My brain is a little fried this Tuesday. But basically, it's like streamable money. Like you're able to set up a contract with an address and pay them some certain amount. I think the smallest increment of time is by the hour. But I think the general idea is, you could set up a constant stream of money to pretty much anybody, to any address. It doesn't even have to be peer to peer. It could be organization to organization. But it's a really, really cool infrastructure, and we gave them some money, and we're happy to see them build out their vision. We also partnered with Huobi Wallet, Dai, and the CDP DApp is now available through their wallet, through their mobile wallet. We've also made Dai available on Pundi X payment platform, which is a really big payment platform in Latin America. And so this is a really cool development. I know a bunch of people on our business development team were super excited for that one. And then the last one is Shuttle One, which is it's a DeFi finance company that's working in Southeast Asia, basically to help people on the ground have more access to liquidity and microfinancing. And they're a really cool project, and they actually reminded me a lot of Daniel's project. If you guys were on the call a few weeks ago, Daniel is doing this thing called Enable.credit, and it's unsecured microfinancing to very specific parties in basically like emerging economies, and it's really cool, really great projects because yeah, I mean there's a lot of reasons, but I'm not gonna ramble, so I'm gonna keep going. All right, from the Maker blog, we have a couple of cool things. We had the post early last week on an update to Maker governance polling, and that post basically goes into some of what I talked about earlier, which is this new upgrade to governance that we've been blessed with. So very happy about that. Definitely worth reading. And then the newest blog post to come out is an introduction to emergency shutdown in multi-collateral Dai. So over the last few months, we've been releasing introductions to various aspects of the multi-collateral Dai system, including like auctions and keepers, uh, emergency shutdown. And so as we inch closer to the release of multi-collateral Dai, all of this documentation is going to be released. And I know a lot of it, the team has been working really hard to get this stuff high quality and out there. So I'm excited to see these blog posts come out. So definitely worth reading if you are interested in the granular details of how multi-collateral Dai will work in various aspects. So yeah, that's about it for all the sort of official stuff. I'm just gonna take a quick pause because that was 16 minutes straight of me reading through an agenda. So if anybody has anything, let me know. If not, we're gonna continue on. So we have some highlights from the community this week. I posted my monthly tweet storm of curated community mentions. So every month, we used to have like a little competition where we would randomly select one kind of contribution from the month and give them like a special prize or something. But and we did it all on Reddit, and that got like literally very little engagement. So we switched it to a tweet storm, and what do you know, like we should have known that the crypto hemisphere, like the crypto social sphere, all lives on Twitter. So those tweet storms have been really great. We've been seeing awesome engagement with them, and like it's a really, really awesome just thread so that we can highlight some of the stuff that our community's been doing. And literally every month is just I have like 20 different updates from like 20 different things that our community has done. And so it's been really encouraging putting those together month after month. So I think this is the third one I did, or second one. Can't remember. but another one will be coming in the beginning of September, recapping August. Besides that, we also put out a PSA, little guide on how to close your CDP after using Coinbase Earn. We've had a huge influx of very small users that just tested out the CDP mechanism through the Coinbase Earn program. And a lot of them flooded to our communications channels and asked, how the hell do I close this thing? What do I do? And we at Community Development put together a really short one-page guide just explaining how to do it. So you could point to anybody there who has that issue. Besides that, we saw our explainer video featured on DApp Explorer. So DApp Explorer is a pretty cool website. It actually has a ton of video explainers on like a ton of different dApps. I only discovered it basically this week, and I thought it was pretty cool, worth mentioning. Also, we're actually running a bit of a feedback campaign through our product team. So if you've ever used a CDP or Dai, definitely help us by filling out this form. I'll post it actually on Twitter shortly after, because this has been live for about a week now, and I know feedback is the best way to improve the product. So we're always asking our community for feedback, so we can make things better for you guys. But yeah, onward. So we also saw Wisp. Wisp is upgrading to get a bunch of new features. If you guys don't know about Wisp, we actually had them as a guest on, I think, a month or two ago. And it's basically decentralized payroll with Dai, and it allows people to get paid basically through crypto. It's a crypto payroll solution. It's really cool. So they're doing batch payments now. They also are able to display the actual value denominated in fiat, and they also allow for scheduling ahead now. So that was not there before, and they're slowly but surely iterating and making their product better, which is really great to see. So besides that, there was a few really cool articles. SportX, which is one of our partners, put out an article about how they are the first end-to-end Dai dApp. And what that means is that they actually abstracted away the need for Ethereum. And they did so using meta transactions. I wish I knew the granular technical details of how meta transactions work, but that's beyond me. I probably need to sit down for a couple hours and do some reading, but it's really great. SportX is a sports betting platform that uses Dai exclusively, and I think they're in the last month they had something like something short of 700,000 Dai in volume on their platform. So it's a really cool application that we see kind of blossoming in front of us. We were also mentioned in Consensus's recent article on the 20 blockchain projects with the most dev activity on GitHub. And obviously, dev activity on GitHub can be deceiving a bit. But nevertheless, we do have a lot of activity on GitHub, that's for sure. And then lastly, there was an article called "The 3 Questions for Decentralized Finance to Scale." I thought it was a really interesting article because it covers a lot of those big obstacles that DeFi in general actually has to overcome, and mostly it has to do with user adoption and making it easy for people to actually interact with these systems and learn about them and incorporate them into like their day-to-day lives. But worth reading. And besides that, the very last thing in terms of community highlights and content that I'm going to highlight is just a bunch of interesting Reddit threads that I saw this week. So there was a Reddit thread called "What is your favorite MCD collateral type besides ETH?" And there's just a ton of great conversation in there covering a lot of different collateral types. There's another thread titled "Who pays the gas for the byte function call?" Or in other words, can you prevent liquidation by creating millions of tiny CDPs? So this explores like an attack vector where somebody would create a bunch of tiny dust CDPs, not dissimilar from the Coinbase Earn program, mind you. And the fact that if they fall below their collateralization level, they're sub $1, because of the cost of transaction fees, it's actually not profitable for keepers to byte these and to liquidate these little CDPs. So what happens when you have a bunch of underwater CDPs? And this is actually a really bad attack financially for the attacker. And also it's really easy to remedy because anybody can kind of just be philanthropic and decide to pay. Even Maker governance can decide to just fund somebody to bite a bunch of dust CDPs. It's kind of like a non-issue because it compared to the overall size of Maker, it's going to be really hard to have millions and millions of dust CDPs. It's like a very unlikely attack vector, but nevertheless, it's interesting to think about, and it was a pretty cool thread to read through. All right, and lastly, there is a thread titled "What would happen if a large amount of Dai was effectively lost or burned due to smart contract bug, and large numbers of people are unable to purchase Dai to repay their loan." And this was also pretty cool because to a certain extent, Dai does get lost, gets burned. People, send it to the wrong addresses that they don't control. There's always going to be some amount of Dai that is just displaced, right? And so exploring uh, the implications of that is it's pretty good to read this thread. It's not as scary as you think. That's all I'll say. All right. So let me just look at the chat real quick before I get into events. So Iron Rand asks, please, why is dev activity on GitHub obviously receding? Well, it's you can't, like, this is the way I think about it, and like maybe like I might have an unqualified opinion, but I also might, I don't know. You tell me if this makes sense, but like the way I see it is, I know GitHub is just one stop in a developer's like journey of like building something, right? Like I know a lot of people just work on VS Code completely away from GitHub, or they work in their own repositories, and then when they actually have like a publishable commit, they do it. In terms of Maker, I actually don't know that it's obviously receding. And also, like, it's really hard to measure the like efficacy and productivity of code because you can't measure it by lines of code. I mean, one line of code can be way more significant, for example, than like 30 lines of code in a different contract. So it's kind of subjective, and you have to kind of look at it in context. But and also when you're coming around a time when all the code is almost done, and you're really doing revisions and like very careful uh, changes, you might have less activity but more focused activity and making sure it's right, for example. So in terms of productivity on the engineering side, I personally don't think GitHub activity is like a very good indicator. Uh, but that's kind of my own personal theory. So I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that was a decent answer. Frank asks, "Hello, David." And by the way, feel free to hop on the mic if you guys have a mic. So Frank asks, "Hello, David. I have not had a chance to vote on the multi-collateral Dai priority poll, but yesterday I saw ETH as a choice. Today I only see GNT, OX, and OMG. Did anything change in the last 12 hours?" Yeah, I think it's or is perhaps my web page not fully loading. So I've actually also had this issue, and it's the web page not loading because you should be able to see 8 different open governance polls, one being the stability fee adjustment, and then 7 of the actual polls. But yeah, it's probably the page not loading. Uh, I would try to like disable and re-enable MetaMask. Uh, yeah, I've been experiencing that same issue. Cool. All right. Well, with that, yeah, no problem, of course. So with that, I'm gonna go over some real life events that are happening actually this coming week because Berlin Blockchain Week is happening, and if you guys are there, hit me up. I'd love to like meet you guys in person and chat and do stuff because that week is gonna be packed with activities. So for those of you that don't know what's going on in Berlin Blockchain Week, I'll give you like a brief synopsis. I'm not going to go like line item by line item of all the stuff we're going to be doing, but there's 3 main conferences. There's Web3 Summit, there's DAppCon, and then there's ETH Berlin. ETH Berlin is going to be doing an awesome hackathon as usual. And then besides that, there's a bunch of these kind of like derivative events like the Dai Dappy Hour that we're going to be doing. the Misfit Economy, conversations on DeFi. There's the Meta Cartel Demo Day. There's a Samsung Next event. There's a bunch of really cool events, and you could actually find out about all of them through this tweet storm if you guys are interested in checking it out. Yeah, so Iron Rand just said, yeah, all 8 are there for him right now. Yeah, so it's definitely a matter of just loading the page. So besides Berlin, some of the other stuff that's going on the 15th of August in a couple of days in Buenos Aires, we have Mariano DP. He's going to be speaking at Pulso IT Argentina, which is basically a tech conference. I don't know how big it is, but yeah, I'll check it out later. But yeah, Buenos Aires events, and then we also have a few things happening in South Korea. So we have Nathan, our new community manager. He's going to be participating in DeFi Sale, which is a meetup that's happening tomorrow. And then on the 20th, we have Du from business development team. He's going to be participating in the blockchain gaming meetup in South Korea. Yeah, in Sale. And so yeah, that's about it for the stuff that's going on this week. I'm gonna repost all the Berlin stuff because it's just a lot. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 different events that week. So definitely cool if you guys are joining, but I don't want to bore you with the details if you're not. So yeah, with that, it's a pretty slow week, no guest, and I don't know if there's too much to talk about, but I'm happy to open it up to like Q&A, discussion, anything you guys want. But if you guys are feeling okay to end it early, I'm happy to end it early. And also, just as a side point, if you guys are participating in the calls regularly and you have any ideas for how to make the call more valuable to you guys, let me know. I'm happy to switch up the formatting, introduce even just discussion guests or co-hosts. So feel free to reach out to me about that. All right, and with that, I think we can end the call early. All right, sweet. Yeah, thank you guys for coming. I hope the recap wasn't too tedious this week. Anyway, I will see you guys next week. Appreciate it.